So funnily enough, I didn't think I'd be making this video this soon, or at all in all honesty, but it seemed like the vast majority of you seemed to really enjoy the last one. So once again, I have created a bunch of Spartans based on your own ideas, with the parts that I have available thanks to the absurd amount of money that I have unfortunately spent on this game. I say unfortunately, but in all honesty, I think if I can create an engaging, entertaining piece of content for you guys, then I really don't think it's that big of a deal. Anyway, without wasting any more of time, let's jump straight in. Okay, but before we get into the builds that I worked on, I just want to quickly shout out this one from Bandit HBS. It's a really cool Mega Man build and builds up my temptation to want to buy the Squire helmet just a little bit more. Anyway, the first one I made for this video was a suggestion from Gungnir Gaming, and that was to recreate Boba Fett. And honestly, I don't like these at all. I think it really didn't turn out that great. I wasn't really that happy with the coating choice as well. And I know I say that knowing that I'm the one that made it, but I would eventually revisit this on the Mirage core, which had a much better Boba Fett coating, and I think this build does look a little bit better than the other two, but it's still far from great. Hero's Dream suggested that I build All Might multiple times, and I've never watched MHA, but I thought I'd give it a go. For this, I used the Mark IV core and the security shoulder pads to give it that broad frame. I used the Kabuto helmet with the antlers attachment to mimic his signature hairstyle, and I used the Blue Mojo armor coating as it captured all of the right colours. Shadow Lotus asked if I could make a COG or UIR soldier. I have done a COG build way in the past and I can't find an image for it, but I decided to do the UIR one instead, as I thought it'd be something a little bit different, and I really like how the UI armor looks anyway. And both of these builds I did two different versions, one with the ULLR helmet, which I thought looked a bit closer to the UIR helmet itself, and one with Gungnir, and both of these I think look pretty good. I used the Mirage core as it overall had the same shape, with some of the Yoroi shoulders. Now funnily enough, on Mirage, if you change your body type, it actually lowers the position of certain shoulder pads, so that helped in making this one look a lot better too. The Alloy 76 coating I thought was a perfect match, and I really like how this build turned out. Raz Grizzone asked if I could make a Judge Dredd inspired look, and I tried my best, but again, really wasn't a huge fan of how this turned out. I think the colours for the most part I got right, but I don't think anything about this build really screams Judge Dredd. The Tax Collector asked me a couple of times what I think Sergeant Johnson would look like if he was a Spartan. So I made a build that was slightly inspired by his mech suit from Halo Wars 2 using the Mark IV core and some various pieces that were available on that armour. Overall, I don't think anything about this necessarily screams Sergeant Johnson, but I think it was a pretty good Spartan build. Okay, next up wasn't from a specific suggestion, but I did decide to take a crack at an Optimus Prime build. I was told by a couple of people that this looked a bit more like Ultra Magnus, and I'd be inclined to agree, although that wasn't what I went out of my way to create. I think the one on the left especially looks like Ultra Magnus, with the one on the right looking a bit more like Prime. Either way, I do like how both of these look, which this then led to a couple of other Transformers related builds. Samurai Saint Ave suggested that I make a G1 RC, and to get this one as accurately as possible, I had to do the unthinkable. I had to buy the Catias bundle just so I could get the faded blush armor coating. I used the CQB helmet as it had the right overall shape, with the Mark IV core to still give it that blocky design and the Farah shoulder pads to round off the edges. And I think it came out pretty accurately. Skull King then asked me to make Bumblebee or Megatron, or maybe an attempt at Venom. We'll revisit that last one a little bit later. Instead of choosing one, I just decided to try both, so here we have a Bumblebee and Megatron build. B himself was inspired a bit more by the Bayverse stuff, and for Megatron I tried to take a bit more of a classic approach. I don't think either of these turned out badly, but I could probably do a little bit better. Splatstick69 then asked me for Soundwave, and I do like how this build turned out, but I don't necessarily think it looks a lot like the character that was asked of. For this one, I also took a couple of suggestions from the Discord server, which I'll leave a link to in the pinned comment. Seaweed asked me to create a Gundam build. For this, I used the Mark VII core, with some shoulder pads that were originally from Mirage. There is already a couple of Gundam-inspired coatings in the game, so of course, I had to use one of those. I used the helmet that belongs to Riz from the Halo TV show, since it already has the little antenna pieces, and I thought it fit pretty well. And as a whole, I think this was a pretty damn good attempt. Unfortunately, this then got a little out of control, as I then started to contemplate whether or not I wanted to buy a Gundam of my own. It's not really a franchise I've ever had any attachment or investment investment in, but Seaweed won't stop talking about it in the Discord, and a lot of the Gundam related stuff looks really cool. And I know a lot of Halo stuff was inspired by Gundam, so now I own one. It's just an easy grade build, it's nothing too special, but I'm already planning on buying the tools and working towards getting some high grade stuff. So thank you, Seaweed, you got me addicted to more plastic that I don't need. Anyway, going back to that Venom one, I didn't really know how to make a Venom build specifically. However, I had the idea to do an anti-Venom build instead, and I kind of like how this looks. It's nothing too special, overall it's a pretty basic one, but I think it's kind of cool. Unintelligible in the Discord also asked me to make a Garfield Spartan, and you can tell just by looking at him that this guy hates Mondays. Next up, I attempted Darth Vader. I know this was a suggestion from a couple of people, but I couldn't actually find any of the comments to quote retweet the post with. I used the Mark 5B core with the Cinder Ring coating and some shoulder pads from Hazmat, as overall these had the right sort of shape. I used the Mark 5B specifically so I could use the scarf chest piece. Of course there's no capes in the game, but this was as close as I could get. And I also once again used the Kabuto helmet as it had the right sort of shape. And I actually love how this build looks. Next up we had a suggestion from Dragoon to create a character that I have no idea who it is, but I took a crack at it and honestly I wasn't too happy with how this one turned out either. American Ranger then asked me to make this character from Titanfall 2. I think it's from Titanfall 2, it has been such a long time since I played through the campaign of that game, but after this build it really made me want to revisit it. I used the Rakshasa core and the flanker helmet with a helmet attachment. The coating is just Cadet Orange, and the orange visor that I'm using was free in the JFO event. This is another build that I genuinely ended up really liking, and one that I just happily use as my main Rakshasa Spartan. Grimlock Smash came back with another Transformers related suggestion, this time to do Unicron. This was a bit more difficult than most of the others, as I don't really think there's many armor pieces that kind of match Unicron's look. I tried two versions, one with the Kabuto helmet because of the horns, and another with Winter Knight because with the right coating it kind of looks like it's got a mustache and a beard. Carter Valentine tagged me in a post asking if I've ever tried to make a Ninja Turtles build, so of course I had to take a crack at that one. I used the Eagle Strike core for this, with one of the cadet coatings and a different visor for each Turtles look. The Line Breaker helmet felt like the right choice here. I used its exclusive attachment for Donnie specifically to try and encapsulate that tech nerd look. The builds themselves I don't think are anything too special, but I think they turned out pretty nicely. Digion asked me if I can try to build the original Seeker trio, and I did try to make one of them, but I just didn't have stuff that I thought looked good for these builds, unfortunately. We had another suggestion from American Ranger to create a character from Fallout New Vegas, and this build I also think turned out great. Halo doesn't have any dusters, so once again we had to resort to the Mark 5B core and using the scarf attachment as a replacement. I used the Sundown Smile armor coating, which I believe came with a Con Mage bundle, as well as the Iron Grip rail shoulder pads to try and keep the frame somewhat narrow, and in the end I think this Spartan looked pretty good. Lemon Cocat once again asked for another set of Splatoon armor, and I think this one turned out much better than my last attempt. I only bothered with the Splatoon one last time because my girlfriend is a big fan, and that also still applies here, but I actually like how this armor set turned out. I had quite a few people ask me to create a clone commando, so I once again used the Mark IV core for this one, with the extender helmet making use of its exclusive attachment. I don't think this is my best work, but it's not a bad attempt, but I still think I prefer my Stormtrooper build from the last video. Little Ghost then requested a Cyberman. This is yet another Mark IV build, but honestly it just works so well for so many of these. Again, not my finest work, but still not a terrible attempt. And finally, let's close out with a bit of a stinker. That Mage Doe asked me to recreate one of the Fallout power armor sets, so I attempted the T51B, I think it was. I might have completely butchered that. I'll be honest, I'm not a huge Fallout fan. I have played through Fallout 4, but I couldn't get through it on vanilla. I installed a bunch of Halo mods, so I kind of just went through the entire thing with the Mark V. I used Eagle Strike for this one as it seemed like the perfect fit, and honestly this just kind of looks like a default green Eagle Strike Spartan. There is some sets that I think would work a lot better, like the Lead Belcher helmet I think would be perfect for a set of power armor, but I don't own that. I did see someone say that EOD would probably be a good choice, and I think I would agree with that, so I might revisit this when Vanix's version comes out in a couple days. But if I do end up doing that, keep an eye on the Twitter to see it on there. And that's the final build. I don't think I did as many this time around, but this is definitely a video idea I will revisit in the future. Probably not for a little while now, because I think it'll start to get boring if I just keep doing this every week. But the next time I do, there should be some new armor out, so maybe I can take a crack at a wider range of builds. Anyway, let me know which one your favourite was down in the comments. If you've got any cool Spartan builds that you've worked on yourself, feel free to show me in either the Discord or over on Twitter. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.